You make a bunch of noise out here, so they have peace and quiet in here. Because there's no better sound than the squeak-free guarantee from Advantech Subflooring and Advantech Subfloor Adhesive.
Pete Yost here for the UnBuild It podcast, and I'm here with my fellow podcasters, Steve Bruton and Jake Basic. Oh, shoot.
Late in the day, so I can't.
I got those confused. Oh, that's okay. That's okay because we're going to talk about confused spaces in addition to confused names.
He thought that up, reviewed it in his head, and then decided it was
a
still
good idea.
Going to be what he leaned into.
So we're going to talk about garages.
The fact that after all of that analysis, he still did it.
Let's roll right into this. Let's not start over.
Actually,
starting over is off the table.
I got excited about starting that way. Okay, we often say you're trying to avoid confused spaces. Every space should either be completely inside the building or completely outside the building, although we'll talk about what that means. But to me, garages are inherently confused spaces. So should I elaborate, or do you want to jump in already with,
I want you
with
to.
your frickin' carports?
I want you to elaborate.
So
I want to understand how crazed you are.
Let's start with, if one of the control layers is bulk water, is the garage inside the building or outside the building from the perspective of the bulk water control layer?
Do you want to take this? Because he's leading us down a red herring.
It's inside.
Okay, that is true, but we drive things in and out of the garage that carry a lot of bulk water with them. So do we have to treat the space as if it's going to see bulk water? Indeed we do. It's just not coming from shedding off the building. It's coming from another source. That, to me, is the first way that it's a confused space, is you would think, I don't have to control for bulk water. It's, well, and I'm thinking specifically about a tuck-under garage, a garage that's part of the house. Let's go to the next control layer, the air control layer. Is it inside or outside the house?
Outside.
I'm with Steve on this one.
Totally agree with you. And then in terms of the thermal?
Confused.
Could be both, yeah.
Well, that's why I'm saying this space is, in more than one way, often a very confused space. And if we add to that, we always further complicate spaces when we allow people to live in those buildings, because what are they going to bring into their garage?
Stuff.
Yeah, and that's a great way of describing it, because it could be everything from a snowblower to golf clubs to
baby clothes,
lots of leather items, baseball gloves, all that kind of stuff.
I'm kind of fascinated by the fact that I use some obscure word like stuff, and he went off the rails excited about it. So
it's the fact that it's people's stuff and all that can mean. Huge range of material, lots of cardboard boxes often. Okay, so I think it's a confused space because not only in the way that we think about it from a building science perspective, even before the occupants come in, but even more of a confused space when people bring in their stuff. And they have expectations about what that space is going to do for them, other than hold vehicles.
I want to put my canned goods out here and have them not freeze. I want to keep my golf clubs out here and have them not freeze.
Well, not get any corrosion.
Okay.
The
not
golf
rust.
bags are often not rust. The golf bags are often made of leather, correct? I don't golf.
Some good ones, maybe.
And leather is a great medium for growing surface mold. So, do you guys agree with me that these are kind of funky spaces?
I will never disagree with you, Peter.
I have to agree as well. As much as I don't want to agree with you.
I
Because
like how reluctant he's willing to agree with you.
I was going to say the word yippee. I've never said that.
From a content standpoint, it's better if we disagree, right? But I would say that with a little bit of sussing things out, they're no longer confused.
Oh, so that's key. Because if we think of them as not completely inside the house and not completely out, then we have to have a new term for what they are. And I think it's going to be something like a tempered space.
In-betweenies? Can we call them in-betweeny?
Well,
I just want to hear Peter say it.
I didn't say yippee, so I'm not going to say, what was it, in-betweenies?
In-betweeny. He just said it.
Well, that you kind of coerced that.
All right, so what are we going to let slide? If we think of, so let's make the jump then from inside or outside the house to what it means to be a conditioned space. Okay, so what are the things that could be included or should be included or must be included to call a space conditioned?
It has to have the ability to regulate temperature.
Okay, so space heating, space cooling.
Yeah.
What else?
Humidity control.
Humidity control, dehumidification, or humidity control could either be adding moisture or taking moisture out. What else?
Airtightness.
So ventilation, right? If it's going to be airtight and we want to condition with to ventilate it, and then to me there's five are the conditioning things, and the last one is filtration.
Okay.
That's what we expect to happen inside the building. And then the question is, if you temper a space, what are we tempering? And of those five, which do we have to do based on how we've configured and built the space and how the people are going to use that space? And I bring this up because I have a client who has struggled with moisture in the garage when the garage is a tuck under and the garage doors don't open that often and there's no windows.
So I got a question for you, just so me and the audience can catch up.
Okay.
Would you consider the use of the word tempering to just simply mean a lower level of conditioning?
It could be, yes, I would say, but not just that. It would be a lower level of conditioning and picking out some elements but not others. So for instance, could I have a tempered space that in a cold climate, there might be some space heating and moisture control, but probably none of the others. No cooling,
No ventilation.
no ventilation, and probably no filtration.
Gotcha.
That kind of seems like a yes.
But I would say that those five things, it sort of depends on how the garage is going to be used. So it's the frequency of the
climate
garage use and what are you planning to keep in that space besides vehicles. And I'm really struggling with this because our first impulse was, because I hadn't broke it down into those five functions, well, look, it's a stale space, right? Let's just put in 2 lunos and use the lunos to pull outside air in, because that'll shake up the space and they won't have moisture problems. And they didn't related to the lunos until this summer. And the problem with this summer was we had, weeks on end where the dew point never got below 65. And rather than reducing the moisture content of the garage, the lunos was significantly increasing the moisture content of the garage. So I'm struggling with this one particular client situation, but I think there's a much bigger issue about, I think we have to do a much better job of, if we have a tuck under garage, we have to be very clear about what it means to temper and for what stuff, and then connect that to whether we introduce all 5 or 3 of the 5, and then as Steve said, to what level. So I'm going to define tempering as selectively choosing which ones we include and the intensity of their regimen.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think one of my questions for you guys is, A, what do you think about this concoction? And B, have you had problems with garages that are confused spaces and create problems for your clients? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you two.
Go ahead, Jake.
I will say that we kind of have a problem with the garage at my personal house. We have conditioned space above it and conditioned space on one side.
That
of
was
it.
probably the architect's
So
fault.
absolutely the architect's fault. I can't believe I didn't even think to sue him yet.
And you got conditioned space adjacent to the rear of the garage.
Yeah, so there's like kind of 2.5 walls or 1.5 walls that are conditioned, and then the ceiling is conditioned. We air sealed the garage to the same level that we air sealed the house, because 2.5 of those walls are adjoining, so we're trying to keep it separate from an air quality standpoint from the rest of the house. And then it's like, we kind of abide by this rule is like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter that there's 60 feet of wall on this house that is not requiring the same thing that other parts of the house are.
Right.
We're not going to say, oh, don't worry about doing that here. We'll do it over here.
Yeah.
We kind of just go, this is how we're doing it. Do it on the whole house, unless it's really going to cause a problem. Because we don't want to get into it works here but not here. We don't do it here. Like, that causes problems in itself. If you park both of our full-size vehicles in there at any point in the year, you drive around, the engine gets hot, you come home, you park in there, you shut the garage doors, that space tends to run between, let's call it 15 and 40 degrees hotter than the outside. And in the middle of summer, it can be absolutely stifling inside there. That can't be good for the space above it, because while there is...
I hadn't even thought about that.
There are 17 or 18 inches of insulation.
Conditions in that space that then affect the adjacent space,
Yeah, because now we've just raised part of the environmental contact point 15 degrees or 40 degrees.
And does a higher temperature make for more volatilization of stuff that's in the garage?
I don't think that we've noticed anything. The only time that we've ever had moisture problems is 2 cars packed with snow and it melting. That's it. And like, we don't get standing snow in my market. Last winter, we didn't even get snow enough to sled. It's a substantially lesser problem than.
And see, the use of this garage is probably highest when it's snowing. So they're bringing their vehicles in and out with a big moisture load. So they don't use it very much, but when they do, they bring in a lot of moisture.
Yeah. They're fair weather outside parkers, is what you're saying?
I would love to tell you the details of where this house is located, but I probably shouldn't do that but it's
this
absolutely...
is Peter's house. That's why he's obfuscating.
No, it's stunning. The setting for this is absolutely stunning.
Okay. So he's hinting, but he's not going to tell.
No, we're not getting any info out of him.
That's the only use case that I'm aware of that we've had any issues whatsoever. And it's not really an issue. It's slightly frustrating. We've talked about putting in a ventilation system to try to exchange the air with outside air just to even it out, just to balance it a little bit like you're talking about. But we haven't pulled the trigger on it. Yeah,
and in my experience, if you do ventilation and your primary result expected is better moisture control, you better have
You have to know when to do ventilation.
You have to have a control on that says don't operate when the moisture content of the air outside is higher than the inside. And okay, now you've just made it more complicated. And what if people say, well, the garage is always dusty? Okay, well now I probably should add some filtration. And that's the problem. I think this is tied to how the space is confused, but also the either changing or the confused expectations of what is that garage supposed to do for you. Steve, have you had any projects or clients where this
is garage? Yeah.
Most right?
Most of them have a garage.
You ever done a pool house that also had a garage in it?
A pool house that had a garage? No, I've done a pool house.
Wow.
Not
just
what I meant
of
was,
the level of quantity.
Do you have garages that are a problem? Have caused problems for you because of the way they perform?
No. None of our garages.
That's really interesting. And you have clients that probably have high expectations.
We have workshops under. I've done garages with basements, spaces underneath them.
Tuck under might be in my opinion, the highest risk.
Yeah,
right?
tuck under is probably, in 30 years, maybe 3. Like, I hate them.
Yeah. They weren't a good choice.
Popular. They really, really are.
Well, they have a, they're convenient in a sense that you can put them down there, put bigger house on it, not spread the house out. But the problem is every time I go in the garage, I have to carry something somewhere. Like everything is either going up or down.
But if you're coming home late at night with the groceries and car full of kids, it certainly is nice to pull the car into a secure space, well lit, that then you can empty the car of the kids.
No, but
and
I'm
the
just
groceries.
saying, as opposed to a
My garage is
one-story.
secure
Yeah,
and well lit.
and his is.
Yeah, but yours is
and it's not a tuck under.
well, it's
Oh,
tucked under a space.
Yeah, it's tuck under.
But my point is, when I think of tuck under, I mean adjacent to the basement.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about with tuck under.
That's what I pictured
No,
too.
to me, tuck
Technically,
under is
mine is
anything
Yeah,
that is
well,
tucked into the
I mean,
building.
you're free to go change
Yeah,
the
he's wrong,
definition of
but-
words.
I'm wrong.
I think in traditional architectural terms, tuck under means it's in a basement. It's in the walkout
It's a
part of it.
walkout garage. It's
Yeah.
a drive-out garage. How's that? Yeah.
There's such a thing as a garage that you can't drive in and out of.
No, see, now you're just playing games with us.
I'm playing games
A
with you.
tuck under garage is that the garage is tucked under the whole house, not a partial section.
Okay,
of
so
the
maybe
house.
I should say my concerns are when the garage is an integral part of the living structure.
Integrated part of the living structure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean
It
that's
has common
so
walls.
it's on the first floor, and there's the house adjacent to it.
So the garage you're talking about, is it a tuck under or is it something else?
Well, it's kind of in between. It's weird.
Leave it up to Peter.
Yeah,
I
no,
tell people about them, they don't believe me.
it's hard to describe because there is no basement there is a basement that's above the garage.
Okay, so let me ask this question.
There's a basement
No,
above the
no.
garage.
It did. I know for some of you that are listening on audio only, this might be a challenge, but I'm holding up my right hand and saying, if this is where the first floor is the garage slab, the part where the wheels touch the concrete, below the first floor or above the first floor?
There are two first floor levels to the house because it's built on such different levels. I wish I could show you the drawings.
Of the two first floor levels, the larger of the two is my hand, and I'm holding my hand suspended in the air, is the garage slab where the wheelies touch the slab.
Now you're being condescending, and I know you're going to slap me with that same hand.
Is the slab below that first floor level or above it?
Below.
Below. Good. We're making progress here, people. Second question.
Please go and check out the video version of this section of the podcast.
Of the first floor level, the majority first floor level, is the ceiling of the garage below or above that level?
Below. Significantly below.
So the slab is even more significantly below. It's interesting that the highest point of the garage is significantly below, but the slab was
Isn't
just
it?
below.
So this is an incredibly strange configuration because of the slope of the property.
Okay.
So one side of the garage is truly below grade because that's the uphill side and it's bermed, and then the other side of the garage is at grade, and then there is a space above the garage. But that is an independent space, almost like an apartment space, because the stairwell that goes from inside the garage to the first floor is probably 16 steps and goes to a whole new level of the building, and there's a basement below that. So it's a very odd configuration. But
Very
ignore all that.
non-traditional house.
Ignore all that.
My head hurts.
I'm going to call it a tuck under garage.
Yeah,
I think we can call it that.
The key thing is it is an integral part of the structure, and it has living spaces around it.
I just had an epiphany. Can we agree that tuck under garage is mostly below grade?
Yes.
That's
I think it's simple.
our definition.
How I would define it is a true tuck under garage is at the basement level.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
That's how I would
Yeah,
define a tuck under.
so I don't want to use the term tuck under because there are a whole bunch of garages that are built into the integral part of the living structure.
Well, what's
has
interesting
common walls
is,
with living
as much
spaces.
as we're going to sit here and play the semantics game of tuck under, Mother Nature really doesn't give a damn whether it's a tuck under or not.
It's the fact that it has
common adjacent
Yeah, that's the key.
demising walls. That's the key.
Yes.
So whether they're high, low, indifferent, sideways, crooked, diagonal.
Because that's going to depend on the site and the architecture.
Yes.
But
But
tuck under by the
fact that both of
definition
you
we just
said
figured
button
out.
Synchronization is scary.
Tuck under the way we just figured it out is likely to have foundation walls that are likely to be concrete that may have a large factor in how the building operates as well, though.
Yes.
So there is like an asterisk next to that, like, yeah, it's the same as the other one, but it's not exactly the same as the other ones.
So the other way I would connect how we, not how we design the spaces, but how we spec the spaces is that I think there are 3 places that you should not use paper face.
Is this
drywall.
house built and you're solving a problem, or is it going under construction?
No, this is a house that's several years old.
Okay.
Yeah. But to me, you shouldn't use paper face drywall in 3 spaces: the basement, the bathrooms, and the garage. Because non-paper faced interior sheathing, like fiber rock from USG or dense glass, the first one in particular, fiber rock, is really tough. So in addition to be moisture resistant and more mold resistant, it can take rough impacts and treatment in the garage. So,
I haven't checked on it, but I want to say I've had conversations about that to drywallers and such, and they say, yeah, we can put it in. It is a literal pain to finish.
So I've installed a lot of fiber rock, and it's
Personally?
yeah. When I was doing a lot of remodeling, and even in my own house in Brattleboro, because I use fiber rock a lot in those spaces. But it's incredibly heavy. It's very difficult to cut. It's very difficult to fasten properly. But as soon as you get it installed, it's a whole different story.
It's a whole new world.
All the difficulties with it are for the installer. So it is really hard to get folks to use it.
Which, if we're being honest, those guys piss and moan about having a job, period.
I've never met a happy drywaller, so.
Maynard Ferguson, maybe. He's happy. The guy who
Yeah,
does
but that's
Iron.
the position
Myron.
where he talks about it now.
No, he's really good
I
at
mean,
it,
he
too.
still does it. I get
Yeah,
it. I'm
yeah.
not trying to
Yeah.
diminish.
But
what
he's a good guy. He's a
doing.
happy guy.
Lydia likes it too. She doesn't complain about it.
So anyway, I think that there are ways, since this space is often not fully conditioned, you have to not only work on the expectations of the occupants and the users of that space, but you've got to give it the best deal to start with, which is don't build it out of moisture sensitive materials. And drywall gets put up in a lot of garages. I think probably for these spaces that I'm going to call, inherently confused spaces, most of the drywall has some sort of mold on it at some point in time because it's seeing too much moisture. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So, I don't know how close we are to
We got a couple
being
minutes.
done on this topic, but I was going to say, I think what I'm going to do is,
Do you have any resources?
I can't, you and I are like, woo. I think it's like
So we're clear, Peter's
mind melt.
woo noise made less sense in person than it did.
It's a
on the
mind
podcast,
melt thing I was
probably.
trying to
Oh, okay.
convey. I think I'm gonna write this resource. I think I'm gonna talk about how this space is difficult. What are the 5
Wow, we're
levels
getting a garage
of 5
blog.
types of conditioning that fully conditioned spaces have, and then you have to intentionally work with the client on this space is confused. We are gonna do or not do all of the 5 functions, and we're going to talk about how much we're going to employ those space conditioning based upon whether we're tempering the space or there are people that want to have that space be fully conditioned all the time. There are other people that use it as a workshop and they say, I only want it conditioned these times, but that's a big change in how you configure that space.
You and I have 2 garages going right now that are both going to be tempered
Yeah.
or conditioned.
Semi-conditioned.
One of which even
tempered,
has the
whatever.
water heater in it, and a
Yeah.
sink and a dog wash station, and I just now thought of that. That
doggy
doesn't really
wash.
apply to what we were just talking about.
No, but
So-
you could have a doggy wash.
Jake Basic and Steve Brute.
I mean, I have done a garage that was a car wash. Like hot, cold.
What
Wow.
what level of car
Talk
got
about-
to park in this garage?
Talk about bulk water management. And
Yeah, we did glazed tile for the interior finish. Like
Ceiling,
concrete
too?
block glazed tile.
wow.
No, we didn't do the ceiling. But the ceiling was like 14 feet. It's not getting wet.
Can we ask what kind of car? Do you remember?
So
Talking Ferrari,
yeah,
Porsche.
he has 3 or 4 Ferraris. He pulls them in. His wife's got a couple Porsches, Mercedes. They probably have 15 cars. The interesting thing, they don't wash them.
Yeah, no kidding. They got a guy.
They got a guy.
They got a guy.
But yeah, that's probably one of the more exotic garages that we did. The glazed block, hot water taps.
All right. Well, I don't.
And it has the swirly hose from above. That
I don't
can go
think it's
360.
going to take me a lot of time to write this, but I think it's going to be helpful for me in this particular case, and I think it's a good resource to have.
Yeah.
And that you guys can. I'd like to see how you use it or not.
I like it.
Speaking of writing, I have a joke for you.
He's
He
announcing
rarely
it's a
introduces them as jokes.
Yeah.
This is like drawing a line in the
Well,
sand. Steve.
this one here, because I can't play it off as like real.
You
'cause
can't segue.
I'm talking about lawyers. So I have to let them know it's a joke and I'm not serious about lawyers. But do you know why lawyers get buried when they have their funeral? They typically get buried at 12 foot or deeper.
No.
Why?
Because really down deep, they're good people.
I happen to love my lawyer very much. Jose, you're fantastic at your job. Thanks for being part of our group.
Yes, thank you, Jose.
Even though I laughed at the joke about lawyers being scum. No offense.
Well, it's not they're being scum. I'm actually elevating them
Oh.
to a point of deep down.
I thought it was
They're-
the opposite of
Well, deep
elevation.
down, they're really good people. So I'm saying that they have potential to be good people
When they're dead.
when they're buried. Well, they don't necessarily have to be buried, dead.
Oh man.
They could just be
Keep
buried.
digging, Steve. Keep digging, Steve. All right. Well, I think I need to close this out, don't you?
I think you do too.
All right. So thanks for listening and watching, or listening or watching this podcast. I hope you have as much fun viewing it and listening to it as we do creating it. We do have a good time. We do this. I hope that's evident. And when you send your questions, because we get a lot of them, and we have gotten questions about garages actually in the past, please send your questions to
UnBuildItPodcast.com.
And we're really happy to have a new platform on which we're going to be spreading the word, and that's the Build Show Network. And I'm the newbie, the old newbie. These two guys have been working with Build a long time. So with that, I'd like to say thanks for listening. See you soon.
Have a good day.
Goodbye, y'all.